Namaste. So now we begin chapter 5 of the Māhātmya-Khaṇḍa of Sri Tripura Rahasya. And in the previous chapter, Paraśurāma has been given his marching orders by Samvarta. He says, go see Guru Dattātreya, and he will give you the secret. So we join Paraśurāma as he's on his way, and he gets into a real high-powered rant. Thus Paraśurāma, in excitement, quickly traveled towards the north to reach the hermitage of Dattātreya. On his way, Paraśurāma thought within himself about the nature of worldly affairs. All these days, I never thought about important matters. Just as a person fallen in a flood is dragged by it, just as a blind person who does not know the route reaps the same fruit by following another blind person, people by and large ignorantly follow the actions of others. So you see, this is his story. His father was murdered by some errant kings. And so he took it upon himself to avenge his father and spent many years traveling all around the planet, slaughtering the Kshatriyas. But actually, he was just following what other people did. He said, they did this, so I'm going to do that. Isn't it? Don't we all do this? Isn't this really the ways of the world? We're born into this world enlightened, pure, and then from very early days in the cradle, the mother is telling, your name is such and such. This is our family, so and so. And we live in this town, such and such town. And we're citizens of this country, and so on. And so everything we do, everything we think, is based on the actions and words of others. This is called the reactive mind. And it's programmed into us. It's conditioned into us by behavior. Behavior is conditioning. You can read up on it. It's a regular topic in psychology. And it really shows us how we become the effect of the environment. And of course, that's completely wrong. It's completely bad for us because our behavior, or who we think we are, or so on, should never be determined by externals. It should spring naturally from within. And that's the state of self-realization. Self-realization can go very, very deep. So now, finally, Paraśurāma is on the path towards self-realization after getting over his ignorant reactive behavior to the actions of others. Also, they think that the wrong result is due to something else. Seeing some good result due to divine plan, people deluded by thirst for results take that to be due to some other action. Just as a fish greedy for meat gets caught in a fishhook, persons greedy about small imaginary pleasures end up in difficulties. What happiness has anyone got in this cruel worldly journey? So in other words, we have a certain karma which is coming by divine law. And this is due to actions in a previous life that we really know nothing about. We've forgotten. So, when good things happen, we say, oh yes, oh yeah, I'm such a great guy, I really deserve this. And then when bad things happen, oh, it's the other guy's fault. He did this to me, and he did that to me, and so on. Come on. That's not it at all. And once we realize this, then we start to get on the path to real knowledge. So you see, Paraśurāma here has been given a shock. And his shock has actually helped him to penetrate the Brahma Granthi. We talk in the other series about Kundalini breaking through the different knots, the Granthis. And the first one is the Brahma Granthi. And the Brahma Granthi means identification with the material body, the gross body, the meat body or food body, Annamaya Kosha. So he has broken through this now. And so he's seeing his life, he's seeing the world in a whole different way. Let's see, next page. He really gets into a rant here. Starting from an insect to an outcast person, every being is continuously striving for happiness. The pleasure of a king of the three worlds is similar to the pleasure experienced by a worm in the urine and stool in respect of taste and copulation. Everything is desired, indeed, for the sake of the body born out of the 5 elements. Ooh, he's really getting down. And this goes on for pages and pages. I'm not going to inflict you with the whole thing because it's all in this same tone. Paraśurāma has realized that the material body and serving the material body and trying to gain pleasures for the material body is basically a futile endeavor. It only leads to rebirth. See? Because these desires, this greed can never be satisfied. And so one goes through life trying to get better and better situation, better bank balance or better friends or whatever, and then chasing these pleasures. As the body becomes weaker and weaker, they become harder and harder to find. So, if we end our life still clinging to these desires, then we simply create another body of the same type, or actually of a lower type, because desire leads us down. All the way, you can go all the way down, really far down, by following desire. And then the other path is to give up attachment to desire and instead try to find one's real nature. So Paraśurāma is seeing this very clearly. And he goes on. Let's see, I'm going to skip a lot of these things. This body is being consumed by old age and is defiled by diseases. It spreads a foul smell by the oozing marrow of the wound. Sweating and lacking luster, it is inauspicious, being eaten up by a host of worms. It is dirty with filth. Seeing the body of another in this condition, the ignorant thinks of his body as always young and permanent. In such a dreadful body, men and women, mutually deluded, see beauty. But what's the beauty in something that's going to fade and eventually fall away? It's a trap. You see? We are trapped into thinking I am the body by our early childhood experiences. And then, of course, the whole society, the whole government, religion, everything reinforces that idea. Because why? A person who thinks their body is easily controlled, easily manipulated, easily scared into doing what you want him to do. So everybody wants us to think that we are the body so that we can be bullied, so that we can be manipulated. Now, the cure for this, obviously, is to disidentify with the body. To realize, no, I'm something higher than this body. I am the consciousness. I am the animating force. When I leave this body, it falls down and dies and has to be disposed of somehow or other. Otherwise, it creates a nasty mess. So, try to understand, we are not this body. And that is like the first real realization of spiritual life. When somebody comes to that point, not just hearing it and accepting it philosophically, but actually realizing it, actually feeling it deep down, that wait a minute, this thing isn't me, huh? This is just something I'm wearing, like a coat or a suit or something. And I can easily, especially if you learn meditation, you can easily take it off. So the same thing happens at death. Meditation is sort of like a rehearsal for death, because the same thing happens. You let go of the body, you withdraw from the senses, you go inside into what we normally think of as dreams or even deep sleep in samadhi. And then we realize, wait a minute, the body is not at all necessary for life. I can do just fine without it. In fact, it's full of pleasure to be without this body. All the suffering I experience, all the inconvenience, all the humiliation that I experience every day comes from this body. You see? And then there's mental suffering as well. So the body and mind are sources of suffering and ultimately have to be given up. And indeed, we give them up every night when we go into deep sleep, sushupta. So, without this sushupta, we cannot survive. We'll go mad. This has been proven by sleep researchers. So we have to give up this body. We might as well get used to doing it now. Like I always used to say when I was teaching Buddhism, die now, avoid the rush. So if we die by our own will, in other words, withdraw from the body, withdraw from the mind, and go deep into the emptiness, the silence within, we'll find a wonderful secret. It can't be explained. It has to be experienced. People are afraid of the void. People are afraid of the emptiness because it feels like death, and it is death. But that's okay. We survive even death, to take another birth later on. So death is not such a bad thing. And like I said, we go into it every night. So it's actually, the void is actually the greatest refuge. It's the greatest shelter. It's the place where we go to refresh and renew our energy. So it can't be bad. And if you meditate, you'll find so many wonderful things there. So what happens? He goes on. He's just down on the body. But you know, there's one thing that he doesn't mention about the body. He is down on the body because he has seen that by following the body relations and so on, one gets into trouble and suffers. But what he doesn't mention is that the human body in particular is the perfect vehicle for self-realization. Why? Because pleasure and suffering are pretty much balanced. In the human form of life, we do have some pleasure, we do have some enjoyment, but we also have some suffering, but it's not overwhelming suffering. And we have the intelligence to understand Vedas. So in the human form of life, one can attain self-realization because we're not overwhelmed either by suffering or enjoyment. See, in the demigods, the planets of the demigods, there's nothing but pleasure and enjoyment. It's overwhelming. And similarly in the hellish worlds, which are also just state of mind. Like a dream. One can feel tremendous, overwhelming fear in a dream, like a dream of being chased by a tiger or something like that. The fear is real, but the dream is just a dream. So in this life, we can be overwhelmed either by pleasure or suffering, depending on our situation. But both of them are dreams. The advantage of the human form of life is that neither pleasure nor suffering is overwhelming in the normal course of life. Of course, if one has some really bad karma or really good karma, then maybe, it can drown out that voice of the conscience within saying, you really should be following the spiritual path, whatever that means for you. But in most people's lives, they are just simply drab. Every day is the same. Get up, take breakfast, go to work, ho-hum, So, in this way, one can spiritualize one's life by simply taking some time in that humdrum, boring daily routine for spiritual education and meditation. It's not a big deal. It starts as a small thing, and then you gradually build it up, and hopefully by the time you retire, you have built up your meditation to where you can go into it full time. And that's when you get the real results. Or you take a vacation. You got some money saved up? Take a meditation vacation. Don't go to one of those fancy temples. Go somewhere all alone. That's what the Buddha used to recommend. Buddha never recommended group meditations. He always recommended the monks go somewhere all alone. He said, go to the roots of a tree, to an abandoned building. Go somewhere all by yourself in solitude and spend your time in meditation. And then you'll get the result. You'll get the reward. And that is self-realization. So Paraśurāma is missing one important point here. That this human body is the ideal vehicle for self-realization. So don't miss the opportunity. Take the time, make the effort, and get the result. Om Tat Sat. Om Harihi Om.